clear. Hey there, guys. What's up? It's Autobot Mike 18 here, back with another one of my TV episode reviews. Guys, after last week's doozy of an episode, I think a lot of people were burning with questions all week long. Is this certain character alive, or did they bite the dust? And we did not get those answers tonight, guys. Instead, we took a different route, and of course, guys, if you didn't know already, just look at the upper left-hand corner of the screen, and there you go. I am going to be shooting another TV episode review, or I'm filming another TV episode review for The Walking Dead. Just watched the latest episode. This, I believe, is Season 6, Episode 4, Here's Not Here. And here is my entire spoiler-filled discussion review. Emphasis on spoiler heavy. But yeah, guys, last week's episode of The Walking Dead, I think, got everybody talking about The Walking Dead again, okay? Because, everybody thought the premiere was good. I hated the premiere, in all honesty. And then episode 2 was really solid, and people were talking about it, buzzing about it then. But episode 3 is what really got people like, holy crap, this is messed up. What the hell's going on? And now we're sort of taking a little bit of a sidetrack with episode 4 in a sense. And we're sort of just focusing on one character. It has much more of a slower pace. And guys, tonight's episode of The Walking Dead was actually 90 minutes long, including commercials, of course. So it was about 60-minute runtime without commercials, the way it's edited altogether. And I gotta say this much. No, spoilers, okay? Spoilers. Going into the episode, now, as we all know, the episode is centered heavily on Morgan throughout the entire thing. The only person that we see from this group that we've come to know, like Rick's group, is Morgan. That's it. Morgan is the only the regular character that we see in this episode. And anyone that Morgan interacts with are new characters that are just in this episode, just for this one episode. Because it's primarily a flashback episode showing what happened to Morgan right after the events of Clear, all the way back in Season 3, when Rick and Michonne and Carl found Morgan in the campsite, in his apartment campsite, and they saw the dark, crazy path he had turned down, and that made Rick aware of the path that Rick could go down. And I loved Clear, great episode. And then so tonight's episode basically establishes what happens to Morgan from that point to when we are introduced to him again in the end of the Season 5 finale, when he is sort of more peaceful, because he obviously went through a big transition. So that's the focus of tonight's episode. So spoilers. If you guys were dying to know whether or not Glenn is still alive or dead, you're not going to find that out in tonight's episode, alright? Maybe wait another week or two, and we'll know. Obviously, The Walking Dead is going to keep you waiting, because they don't want to just... they're not going to say, oh, look, episode 6, here's Glenn, he's alive, or there's Glenn's guts, he's dead. I know they're going to take it to the mid-season finale. But anyway, let's talk about tonight's episode, because that's the focal point. Now, I got to say this much. Going in, again, I knew it was just centered on Morgan. I was actually really worried about this episode, mainly because, and not because of the character of Morgan or Lenny James, who is brilliant as Morgan, in my opinion, does an amazing job hiding that accent, by the way. I was really worried that this episode was going to be placed at just the wrong timing, because I think with a heavy episode like last week's, I was like, I really don't know, is this really the right time for a Morgan prequel story? You know what I mean? So I was really, really hesitant about that, but I must say, I think this episode really did come at a really solid time, because, yeah, we had that stress last week, but, with what happened with Glenn. But I think just to move on and sort of just focus on a smaller story and go to a slower pace, and after having seen the episode, I think it actually worked quite well for the most part. I actually really liked this episode, guys. This is definitely one of the better episodes of the season so far. Though this episode and the last two were all really solid, but this one is a lot more different, not only in tone but again in pace, because it really focusing on just Morgan. I think like the first maybe like 10 minutes gets really slow, and I was like, don't tell me the whole episode is just going to be him just like finding his own path, just on his own, literally coming across either walkers or other humans. But he gets introduced to another human being, and that's where the episode really picked up for me. And I have to really praise the show on something, because they introduce us to a new character, played by actor John Carroll Lynch, I believe is his name. And his character in this episode is named Eastman. And I really liked how The Walking Dead, in a 60-minute episode without commercials, got me to really care and sympathize for some guy that I have never met before nor heard of before in this universe in the matter of an hour. Okay, I really got to give them praise for that, because normally they struggle with that, especially of late. I feel they struggle with introducing new characters and getting them really cemented and making us care for them. But I really bought it with tonight's episode. But going chronologically, the episode starts and ends with Morgan talking to somebody, okay? And we don't know who at first he's talking to. I'm just going to say that much. He is talking to somebody in this, like, darkened room. And we assume it says that it's in the present day, because they do that thing where they say now and then again, like they did in the Season 5 premiere. But Morgan is talking with someone, and we were assuming it's all set in Alexandria somewhere. He's talking to someone. I guessed who he was talking to in the beginning. I thought it was obvious, but you may or may not guess it. Anyway, so then we cut to the past, and we cut right to Morgan in that campsite apartment that he was in when Rick found him. Rick Carl Michonne found him. And he ends up burning it down, and we just to see how versatile Lenny James is of an actor, because we're used to, peaceful, like, I got to keep everybody alive Morgan right now, and to just for him to, and I know I watched some of Talking Dead, like, briefly. They shot this episode in between filming of the first half of the season. Like, they didn't shoot it after episode 3. They shot this like after episode like 7 or something. I don't know. So for Lenny James to go from the current Morgan to, and I don't know how his character is going to evolve in this season. I don't know if he's going to change or not. But to go back to crazy Morgan, like I thought that was incredible. Just mad props to Lenny James. But he ends up burning his apartment, that apartment campsite he has down, and ends up building a new campsite somewhere in the woods. And again builds that like stake fortress, and just kills any walker that's nearby, essentially, and burns the bodies at night. And we're really with Morgan, and we're really just, he's stuck in his own world. He's living his own hell. Yes, I know things went bad after he lost his son Dwayne and his wife Jenny. He actually killed his wife Jenny, who had turned into a walker, and Dwayne was bitten, I believe, by his own mother, Jenny, Morgan's wife. So Morgan has obviously been through some shit, and it just hasn't really been easy for him, quite frankly. And that is why he is the way he is. He let all of that get to him. And that's sort of the path that Rick was following down back in Season 3 when he lost Lori. Had Rick not had that conversation with Morgan, maybe he wouldn't have realized that he's in the same place Morgan is. They have different stories, but essentially they were both going down that sort of path. And Rick sort of stepped away from that towards the end of Season 3, then comes Season 4, and then he proved that to the governor in Too Far Gone, like, look, like, we can come back from where we go. But anyway, that's the point I'm getting at. That's where Morgan is when we are introduced to him. And throughout the beginning of the episode, he is still, he's murdering zombies, which is what you need to do in this world. But he comes across I believe, a young father and his son, his teen son, and he takes this spear and just sticks it through the father's neck, and then he strangles the son to death. And it's really horrifying almost to see this character who we're like, holy crap, like this is Morgan, like this is not Morgan now. Like, I love seeing Morgan now. I love seeing his dilemma of not wanting to ruin or to take another life. and I really wanted to see where the path he was going to go down. So eventually, at some point, he stumbles across this lone hut in the middle of nowhere in the woods. He sees a goat specifically, and he then encounters the character of Eastman, played by John Carroll Lynch. And essentially, Eastman is this guy. I think he had a job where he was like interrogating prisoners before the world went to shit, and he has this hut built in the middle of nowhere. It's just him living there and his goat named Tabitha, which is what draws Morgan in. And when Morgan first finds this place, he has his gun out and ends up firing at Eastman. This is before they formally meet, and Eastman knocks him out and locks Morgan up in a jail cell that Eastman had previously built in his hut. Okay, like before the world went to the way it was. And they introduce themselves, and Eastman learns that Morgan is sort of completely different than he is at this point. Morgan is still on that path. Like, he even asks, like, Morgan, what's his name? And Morgan's like, I think he says either kill me or I've got to clear. And Eastman's like, he like jokes like, oh, that's not a great name. Obviously, that line. But, like, I really like how there are these two different people, and you can automatically tell this is how Morgan is going to be sent back on this path. And I think that in the time period between the midpoint of season 3, when Morgan was found by Rick, and then the end of, or the start of season 5, which is when the episode, or when Morgan's flashback ends, I really felt like it was all of Morgan's story was really told throughout that time period. You know what I mean? So I was really buying into all that and everything. And so Morgan is with this Eastman guy, and we see that, we get hinted at Eastman's past life, of course, and we see that he really is like a sort of like passive-aggressive guy. Not passive-aggressive, but he looks to not using violence. We get a lot of POV shots of Morgan stuck in the jail cell, and he's just like looking at Eastman, and Eastman's outside with this bow staff thing, and instead of just like stabbing the zombies or killing any like just very inhumanely, or killing any humans or anything like that, he like knocks the zombies on their feet, and then just like one, with the stab, and then that's it. He's definitely a different person than Morgan is, and this, I guess, sort of fascinates Morgan in a sense, or, keeps him intrigued. And Eastman eventually reveals that, the key to the jail is unlocked. Like, you can go whenever you want. And Morgan tries to escape, and I think at this point Eastman was like, maybe I did get through to him in some way. Obviously he didn't. Morgan tries to attack Eastman and kill him, but Eastman gets the better hand of him. He is really skilled and crafted with the bow staff. And when he let Morgan go, he's like, you have two options. You can either stay here on my couch or in the jail cell, or you can go. But you cannot kill me. He didn't want... Obviously, he didn't want Morgan to kill him. Why would he? But, so Morgan is still, like, just in that place, and he has to really get out of it. And I think it's really going to be up to Eastman at this point. So at some point midway in the episode, Eastman goes on, like, a scout to like find equipment and supplies, because he's thinking about taking a trip and just moving away from their current location or whatever, just going away from that, I guess, and finding a new place. It wasn't really clarified. And Morgan sees the goat Tabitha in danger because it's outside. Eastman left it outside, didn't bring it in, and Morgan rescues it and kills two walkers and saves it, Tabitha, the goat. And Eastman sees this, and he realizes maybe I can actually show Morgan my ways. So that's exactly what he does. He gives him a book called The Art of Peace, and Morgan starts to realize, and with Eastman teaching him, like, human life is precious. Don't take a life. All life is sacred and important, and we have to make certain choices that really will benefit our lives, essentially, but and keep us alive, of course, but also being conscientious of other life around, because it's all sacred. So, Eastman really starts getting through to Morgan right after this point when Morgan makes the decision to go save Tabitha for Eastman's sake. They start boat trap staining. Morgan's reading up that book. They start eating meals together. And we learn two things about Eastman as the show progresses. And again, I'm going to keep getting back to Eastman because I felt his character was really solidly introduced and really solidly presented to us and really actually very relatable in, I guess, a sense. And I really enjoyed where they took that one character for a whole episode. But we get to see that Eastman he has this whole grave site right next to his hut or his little house, where he takes any walkers he finds. He literally looks at their wallet and their name and carves it on wood and puts a wooden headstone up or something. You know what I mean? And he's been doing this, and we learn that about him, and we also learn about his past life and why the jail cell that he built in his house, or why he specifically built that up before the apocalypse broke out, And he tells Morgan that before everything went to crap, there was this guy. It was one of the prisoners that he had to, I guess, interview or whatever, or see if he was. I specifically forget what his job was, but he gets involved with a prisoner who goes by the name of. I'm gonna have to look at it, guys. I knew I was gonna forget this guy's name. Christian. My handwriting is Crichton Dallas Wilton. There we go. Crichton Dallas Wilton. Crichton Dallas Wilton. Is the name of a guy, bad guy, but really charming on the outside, who ended up murdering Eastman's wife and daughter and son, and then turned himself into the police. Okay, obviously infuriating Eastman, and this is all before the apocalypse broke out. He lost everything. He lost his whole family. So he decided that after they were murdered, that he went to the hut that him and his wife had built even before this thing with this guy Crichton. Okay, and he goes back to the hut. His family has been murdered. He builds that jail cell with the intent of kidnapping Crichton, throwing him in the cell, and watching him starve to death. But he tells Morgan at this point in the episode, when he's telling him this story, I didn't do that. I realized all life is sacred, all life is precious. I didn't do it. Or he doesn't say it like that, but he's like, Morgan's like, well, did you do it or whatever, what happened? And he's like, all life is precious. So later on in the episode, Morgan and Eastman go back to Morgan's campsite, the one with all the spears and everything, because I think they're looking for supplies or something. And Morgan's like, I know where we can find some, obviously, this campsite. And he's left it unattended for quite some time now because he found Eastman's hut. Okay, so they go there, and they feel it's a perfect time. Walkers start coming by. They feel it's a time to, work with the bow staff. So they do that, and then there's a walker that comes by, and Eastman tells him it's up to Morgan to take him out using the bow staff the way he's been training him, the way we've come to see Morgan do it in the premiere and everything, or in the season 2 episode and everything, because he's very skilled with it. And Morgan, he goes and blanks out because he sort of goes back or reverts to the stage where he wasn't himself. He's in that sort of clear state, and you could tell that whenever Morgan goes into his clear state, the top and bottom of and sides of the frame sort of go out of focus, and they're smudged a bit, and you just see Morgan, and the camera's loosely handheld or whatever. And it actually, I really like that effect. Actually, in the beginning, it kind of threw me out of the show. But I started getting really into it, and I'm like, okay, I see. I mean, yeah, they were blatantly telling you, all right, look, this is when Morgan's going to go into his cleared state. But I liked that. I thought it worked for some reason. I don't know. So he goes into that state almost, and he realizes that the walker that's coming after them in their campsite is the same kid that he strangled to death before he met Eastman. So Morgan freezes, Eastman rushes in to save him, and the walker bites Eastman in the back. And Morgan, and then he kills the walker. And Eastman is very upset that Morgan sort of went back to that state. And obviously he's frustrated. He's obviously gonna turn at some point, and he's not gonna make it. So Morgan is then left alone in his pity, and he's like, "Just kill me." He always says that. He says that throughout the episode. When Eastman first finds him, knocks him out, and Morgan wakes up, he's like, "Just kill me." He always says that because he feels he's not supposed to be, he doesn't belong in this world. But when he sort of breaks out of that thought process, he goes into his cleared state. But now he's out of that, and he's trying to still break out of that. But that whole thing with seeing the kid that he strangled as the walker was what really threw him off and really messed him up. So Morgan realizes, you know what, I have to change for the better, essentially. And he goes and he kills a walker using, I think, a modified bow staff. And he comes across another couple in the woods who, and then he approaches him with the bow staff. It looks like he may slip back into his clear state. And this is all after Eastman left and went back to the hut after he'd been bitten. He spares the couple, and they give him like a thing of like chicken noodle soup and a bullet or something, or it looked like a battery to me for some reason. And the woman of the couple says thank you to Morgan, and Morgan lets them go. So Morgan returns with the dead walker bodies and to the campsite, to the graveyard site where Eastman is. And I'm assuming at that point he's building his own grave because he knows what's going to come. And Morgan also finds that Tabitha was eaten by a walker. Pretty gruesome. So as they go to the gravesite, Morgan sees a name on the grave, Crichton Dallas Wilton, and it's the same guy who murdered Eastman's family. And Morgan asks, "Well, why the grave there?" And Eastman tells him, not that I lied, I did go after him, and I captured him, and I did put him in that jail cell, and I starved him for 40 some odd days, and watched him die, and put him in the grave, obviously buried him afterwards. But then he tells Morgan, but at that point, I was in your position. I was the same way that you were when I found you, essentially. I was like that. I was lost. I was broken off from the rest of the world. I didn't value human life like I do now. And he sort of found that sort of way of peace that Morgan has been searching for. And yes, Morgan just spared that couple. But I think this is like the key moment where it just really clicks in Morgan's head. Like, this guy came back from it. I can too. And Morgan decides to come back from it. Okay? So Eastman ends up getting buried. Obviously, well, later on in the episode, they're in their hut, and he tells Morgan that I think he could stay in the hut, or that Morgan can go out and go into the rest of the world. And I think Morgan says that's what he wants to do. And then he's burning up with the fever, and he tells Morgan, "I have a special gun locked up. Use that on me." And we cut away from that. We don't see Eastman doing it, and he gets buried. Obviously, we just see a shot of his name on a grave. And then Morgan gets all dressed up. He does still have that one gun with him. Gets packed up, leaves Eastman's hut, and ventures out into the woods and comes across the Terminus sign. And realizes, holy crap, community for all, safety for all. I'm going that direction. Terminus, I'm coming for you. And obviously along the path of Morgan getting to Terminus, and that's something I found that was actually rather quite interesting, because I always thought that from the beginning of Season 5, in those post-credit scenes, in the Season 5 premiere and the mid-Season 5 finale, I always thought that those two scenes with Morgan was always looking for Rick. But now I realize that in those post-credit scenes, Morgan was really looking for Terminus. And he got lost, and when he finds the church and finds the map with Rick's name on it, realizes, oh look, I changed my ways, just like Rick said I could. I'm going to go after Rick now. And that's when he makes the decision to go find Rick. He wasn't even thinking about Rick, honestly, until he saw the map that Abraham wrote that message on. So I really like how that sort of answered that question. And then we cut back to the present, and we find out that Morgan is indeed, he told that wolf with the long hair, the one who confronted him in the season 5 finale, and the one who tried to kill him in episode 2. He was in the house, and they had like the fight, and it looked like Morgan killed him, but he really didn't. He I guess knocked him out, kept him alive, and is keeping him in this like dark cellar in this house somewhere in Alexandria. And he told the wolf the story, and the wolf was obviously like, oh, wow, that's some story. But he's like, he shows Morgan that he'd been bitten or something. And to me, that didn't look like a bite. It looked like he'd just been cut. But he said that he went into Alexandria with the intent of finding medicine to sort of cure himself. So he tells Morgan that eventually, I'm going to have to kill you just to do what I have to save myself. You know, and I really don't know where they were going with that, but it looks like there is a wolf in Alexandria, and this could easily mean trouble if he gets out of that locked location that he is currently in. You know, what if he is bitten, he's going to turn, and then boom, there's a walker in Alexandria. Or if he's not, if he was just cut and he's just playing it off, if he gets out of there, he is going to try to kill the rest of the people in Alexandria. So Morgan has a dilemma, but Morgan obviously doesn't want to kill him. He's still down that right path. That is why he was so upset when Carol started murdering all of the wolves that were attacking Alexandria. He's like, Carol, there's another way. We can do this differently. And I just really like that Morgan's character is sort of down this path. And I think that that's really going to be challenged for the rest of the season. And that's really what I'm looking forward to seeing. So guys, all in all, I know I went like in depth with tonight's episode, but there was a lot that went on, and I was really impressed with the fact that I thought it was just going to be a slow-paced episode, but Morgan shows that he can carry an episode on his own shoulders, and The Walking Dead has also showed me successfully that they could literally take a character, introduce them, give them a credible backstory, make them feel likable, you know, make them, you know, give them certain traits or something. Eastman specifically being peaceful and just wearing sort of like laid back clothing throughout like every scene or whatever. I really like those little like attentions to detail, and then just giving them a really compelling backstory and thus making us feel for them. They show that they can actually make us care for minor characters that come in very briefly. So I think tonight's episode was really successful, guys. The cinematography was gorgeous. There was some really good Steadicam work in the scene where Morgan first comes to the hut and he's like trying to find the guy who's calling out to him, telling him to put the gun down, Eastman. I thought that was gorgeously shot. The score was incredible. Obviously, since there's not a lot of dialogue in the Morgan scenes, where he's by himself especially, they needed a really heavy score, and I think it really worked overall. I love the scenes where Morgan enters that flower bed in the forest. Just thinking about that, I just had to mention that off the top of my head. I think there were a lot of solid moments. The character of Eastman was great. Morgan being on his own was great. Seeing the flashback of Morgan and seeing how that character got to where he is now, I think worked really well. Guys, I'm going high with this episode. I'm going to go a solid 9 out of 10, I think, for this episode, or an A-. I think they did a solid job of providing backstory for Morgan's character as well as Eastman, and just giving us these two characters who sort of have been in the same place, having connections like that, doubling connections like that. And I think it really worked. The Walking Dead really impressed me tonight. I did not expect a ton from this episode, and it just shows why I love Morgan so much, and I can't wait to see where they're going to go with him as a character for the rest of the season. So guys, with that said, what did all of you think of tonight's episode of The Walking Dead? Let me know down below in the comments. And as always, guys, I thank you so much for watching. Leave me spoiler feedback. What do you think is going to happen next week? You think we're going to go back to the Glenn story? You think they're going to drag it out? Maggie and Aaron are going to look for him. What's going on with that? Let me know down below, guys. Also, sorry for the fact that I haven't really uploaded a lot of videos this weekend, guys. I was really busy. Going to try to get that. Obviously, I'm going to upload this. But I'll try to get some more videos up for you guys this week, throughout the whole week. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye-bye.